We have officially passed the $6,000 mark in our portfolio overall after investing $1,000.71 into the letter F. So we're just alphabetically going through and picking stocks and putting $1,000 on them, just A to Z, picking a ticker that starts with that letter and putting $1,000 on it. That's what we're doing. We're on the letter F. We just passed $6,000. The letter F was really exciting in a way because it brought me outside of my comfort zone to push me to invest in a stock that I would normally not even touch. It pushed me outside of my comfort zone for two reasons. One is that I don't think the stock is undervalued. If I'm right, I'm going to lose money, which is like kind of sucks, but I found the best F I could. I got a 59, I think, right? It's still an F, but it's still an F. And two, it's just a section of the economy that's huge that I never really would have touched. And I honestly still don't really understand that well. This is pretty much the only business model that I can think of where I would put money into this activity. They've got a great business model as far as I can tell. They've got a great management, and the stock is not egregiously priced, I think, but it's not underpriced for sure. Now, I found 201 stocks that start with the letter F. I went through all of them, but there was something else that made it extra frustrating. So the annoying thing about the letter F, aside from just having to go through 201 different companies, is that have you ever noticed that a lot of banks you see are named like First National Bank or something like that? Well, that's because in 1863, not too long after John Deere almost went bankrupt, the United States passed the National Bank Act. So there used to be a lot of state banks that were just local to the state, whatever state you were in, that was your bank. All of the currencies were sort of scattered, and if you went from one state to the next, your currency would not be worth nearly as much. During the Civil War, the National Bank Act forced a lot of these state banks, through taxes and other things, to become nationalized. And when they did that, they forced them to change their name to First National or Second National, like literally in order that they got chartered in that state. They got to name themselves First National, Second National. You could have a really good bank that just happened to get chartered fifth, and they would be called Fifth National, even though they're not the fifth best. They were just fifth in order. One of the names on our list of F stocks was Fifth Thirds Bank. And essentially in Ohio, the fifth nationally chartered bank and the third nationally chartered bank in 1909 merged together, and they just called it Fifth Thirds Bank. When they did this, they basically said, if you're a bank and you deposit money federally, we will let you make your own currency for your state up to that amount. And then that currency was eventually taxed until it pushed it out of circulation, because why would you use a currency that's more heavily taxed than just the federal currency? You did get a lot of cool looking dollar bills out of this. The other annoying thing that happened when going through the Fs is that I didn't find anything. And this has never happened in this whole challenge. So we're on the 6th letter, and this has not happened yet, which is I have not found a stock that I did not think was just mathematically at a discount. So it makes me sort of uneasy to invest in this, but I'm doing it because this is the challenge. I committed to you guys that I would do this and I would just go alphabetically. So what I would normally do is just recognize this as a stock that I would be interested in buying and just put it on a list, write down all my research, what I thought about it, and just wait for that stock to go below what I think it's worth. I bought a stock that I'm probably going to lose money on, basically, is what happened. I said that this company is in a sector of the economy that I would never really touch, and it has a lot to do with gold. And gold is really interesting right now because it's known to be a hedge against inflation, and inflation is as high as it's been since basically the 80s. Normally, I would not invest in gold because it doesn't really do anything. You can't eat it. It doesn't have a brand. It doesn't take you to work and back. It doesn't really improve society in any way other than being a storehold of wealth and a means of exchange. For that reason, it's not really an investment in my mind. It doesn't actively do anything for society, which is sort of what I look for, because that's kind of like the whole point. So normally I would never buy gold, but the way that this company does it is probably the only way that I would ever invest into it. I can't really think of a different one, but the way they do it is really cool, it's really interesting, and I think it's a great business. It sort of reminds me of Berkshire Hathaway in a lot of ways because it is essentially a finance company. They have a very small headcount at headquarters, and they get a lot done with a small number of people. Before I tell you what the stock we bought is, I'm going to go over the results. For the letter F, we put in $5,002.12, and that has grown to be positive $312.52. We're not negative, which is a plus. So even though we're positive money, we still have to check against the benchmark to make sure that there's not something else we could have done. So we could have just mindlessly put money into the S&P 500 index. That's what we're going to compare to, because we could have just done that instead. If we had just put the money in the S&P, it would be up $193, which is obviously less. We are beating the index. We're doing about 60% better than what we would have done if we had just done that instead, which is good, because that's the goal. I mean, honestly, these numbers don't really matter at this point. It's not been long enough for us to even say that the investments we made were a success or a good choice or anything like that. Two, we're not going to sell them, so it doesn't really matter what price they're at. We're just going to keep owning the business, keep collecting dividends if they pay them. They're just great businesses to own, and that's why we own them. The company for the letter F that we ended up putting $1,000.71 into is Franco-Nevada. And Franco-Nevada is a mining royalty company. What a royalty is just like a royalty on an invention, or if you were like an extra in a TV show or a commercial or something like that, and you got a royalty deal, you get royalties from the mine. And the great part about that is that it's based usually on the land itself. What Franco-Nevada's job is to go in and say, yeah, this mine, I think has gold in it, or has silver, or whatever might be down there. And they estimate how much they think is down there and how good the mine is going to be at going and getting it. And then they try to strike up a bargain. They try to do it at what is called the NSR, the net smelter return, which is, after everything is said and done, how much were they able to melt down into the elemental form. If there's gold ore, they dug it up, they processed it, and they melted it down. Now it's gold. The reason that this is a really cool business is because it's sort of a mixture between a dividend and an angel investor, but for mining. There's a lot of situations where the mines just need the money, because what they do is they usually use this money to finance the actual building of the mine. Franco-Nevada doesn't deal with the operational side of any of that. They just have the royalty on what is taken out. Most of the time, that's how the deal works. You try to get at a discount or at, face value, a royalty on what comes out of the ground. And what that gives you is optionality. And this is the key of the business, which is that a mine can pay you out a royalty far beyond what you expected it to. So if I get a 1% royalty on a piece of land, and then they figure out that they can go deeper than they thought they could, and that there's more down there than they thought there was, you get a royalty on that too. Mining is a dirty industry, right? It's heavily frowned upon in a lot of areas, and it can be done in a really crooked way. And you can also just have random things, right? Like you can have flooding, you can have sinkholes, earthquakes, protests, even just assailants. Like you can have someone just attack your mine for some reason. The good news is that owning the royalty to the mine is very different than owning the mine itself. If one miner comes along and is not able to do anything with it, you still own that royalty to what's in the ground. So if someone else comes along and then eventually they dig it up, you still have a right to that. Oftentimes it's not that you don't get the value back, it's just that it gets delayed. So if the miners go on strike or something, you might not get paid for that mine that year. If the gold is there, someone will come and dig it up. Franco-Nevada has that royalty once it's dug up. And this brings up all sorts of important things like rule of law and scientific uses for these different metals, because they don't just have gold, they have basically anything you can mine. They have platinum group metals, they have silver, which is a largely industrial metal. They're even getting into oils and liquid natural gas. The whole greenification of the world is going to be a huge factor for Franco-Nevada, because copper is one of the things that they mine, and we do not have enough copper to do any of the things that the governments are trying to get us to do right now. Batteries are not there, the infrastructure is not there. You need copper for electricity, basically. Like this camera is running on copper, my laptop has copper, my phone has copper. Everything basically needs copper, and we do not have enough of it. This is like a whole nother video that I would want to do, so let me know in the comments if you want me to make a video just on Franco-Nevada, because it's very interesting, I think. Right now at the price that the stock is at, I don't think it's undervalued, but I do think that there's optionality on the stock, basically, where if the future breaks a certain way, it could be worth much more than it is now. So I could see myself losing, 25 to 30% on the current price, but I could also see it doubling or tripling.